It's been a minute, but it's time. Another mailbag episode on the Locked On Rays podcast.
And we have a voice memo, which we're very excited about. So let's get started right now.
You are Locked On Rays, your daily Tampa Bay Rays podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, my name is Kevin Weiss.
I'm Ulises Sambrano.
And we are the host of the Locked On Rays podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Thank you for making us your very first listen every day. Be sure to check out and subscribe to our YouTube channel at Locked On Rays. You can also find us on the social medias, X and Instagram, and email us anytime, lockedonrays@gmail.com. Voice memos preferred. Speaking of that, let's dive right into the mailbag questions with a voice memo from our buddy Michael Begg.
Hey, Kevin, Ulises. This is Michael in Odessa, Florida. I have two trade questions for you guys. Number one, I think the Rays lineup would greatly benefit from a guy like Ha-Seong Kim of the Padres. I know he plays second base, but his original position was shortstop. He had to slide over for Bogarts, and he can play third. I think he won a Gold Glove at second this past season. The Padres also have the relief pitcher Scott Barlow. What kind of trade package would it take for the Rays to get Kim and or Barlow? Question 2. With Bendix now on the Marlins, what realistic trade would you like to see between the Marlins and the Rays? As always, thank you for the podcast.
And this voice memo was sent before the first of what could be many trades between the Rays and Marlins, with Bendix at the helm over there. And then Scott Barlow was also traded as well. So Michael Begg did send a follow-up email asking us just a trade that you'd like to see happen, which may or may not involve Kim with the Padres.
Well, first of all, thank you, Michael, for sending that voice memo to us. We told everybody involved in those trades to not do it because we hadn't put your voice memo out there, but
they didn't listen.
It happened. Yeah, it happens. But no, thank you so much for doing the voice memo. We always enjoy those, and I think listeners do too. Okay, so with the trade, I got caught up on the realistic trade verbiage of Michael there because I naturally went to baseball trade values and then checked out what Luis Arias's surplus value was. And it's around the same as Zach Eflin. And so I'm like, if we didn't have so many starting pitching injuries and a need for durability and innings to be eaten, would not mind a guy like that right in front of Yandy, or at the top of the lineup for these Rays, because I understand that we are hurt right now with the pitching, so we can't even dream upon that scenario. But I dreamt for a little 5 minutes, and here I am sharing that dream with you.
There we go. Hey, maybe your dream includes trading for Paul Blackburn or something like that. Something tells me that the Rays may need some more pitching help. One thing that, focusing on the realistic angle, and I don't know how much of any of this is realistic, but we do know that the Rays seemingly desperately need a catcher, at least one catcher. And there are a couple teams that may be looking to offload some of their depth at that position, because you look at the free agent pickings with the catcher position, and it's pretty slim. Fangraphs actually wrote a pretty lengthy diatribe as to there's not a lot of options out there. There's Mitch Garver, and that's about it, unless you want Gary Sanchez or Victor Caratini or Austin Hedges or Tom Murphy or Mike Zunino. So I was thinking maybe try to go after or pick up the phone and see what it would take to get a Danny Jansen from the Blue Jays, or a Christian Vasquez from the Twins, assuming that you would, or the Twins would be able to eat up much of the remainder of his contract, or trading. I know it's not popular, just like with the Blue Jays, but trading intra-division with the Yankees, Kyle Higashioka. I think they are starting to put more emphasis on Austin Wells and Jose Trevino, and maybe you have a veteran catcher as a stopgap for a season to help, assist, and work with Rene Pinto, because I'm just not. I don't know how I feel about a Pinto Alex Jackson tandem in 2024. I think it's going to take us something a little bit more than that. And who knows? Maybe the Rays are hoodwinking us, and their idea is, hey, we're bringing back Christian Bethancourt, or we have iterations set on having Francisco Mejia take over that role again. I don't know.
Yeah, no. First, funny thing you say about the catching names you said. Mike Zunino, being released with the Cleveland Guardians. Could you see a reunion? I don't think so, but that's out there. He was never picked up, so his last game was June. Is it the end of Mike Zunino in the major leagues? I think so. I think that could be it. Now with Kyle Higashioka, he's on his third AB year arbitration, so he will be a free agent starting the 2025 season, and his salary should be around $2.2 million. Okay, you said intra-division, and what had happened, I think 3 days ago, we talked about Manny Margot and how the Yankees might need an outfielder who is capable of patrolling the fields over there. So I'm thinking, is there a trade to be made here between the Rays and the Yankees, where Manny Margot goes their way, Kyle Higashioka comes this way? Now, obviously, I think the Yankees would want a little bit more of that because of the $10 million and the option and all that. So maybe just a high lottery ticket, kind of like an Keyshawn
Askew, I guess the lefty reliever who was in the low minors. Yeah, something like that.
Something like that.
Flyer attached to Manny Margot for 1 year of Kyle Higashioka. I think that would probably work out. I think something along those lines for sure. And it's really all about what you're looking for. Danny Jansen, he can definitely provide the offensive punch. Higashioka can hit homers, and we know about what he's going to be able to do behind the plate. Same thing with Christian Vasquez. I know we had a down year offensively, but the defense seemingly is always there. And I think there should be some weight and value put on the fact that he's won 2 rings with 2 different organizations. I think that could play up a little bit as well. So I'm just throwing it out there. The catching position, I think, needs to be addressed by hook or by crook. And maybe again, the Rays try to get cutesy and pull off a Travis d'Arnaud situation. Get a guy off waivers, or a guy who's been DFA'd, bring him in for $100,000, and see him basically become an all-star and move on somewhere else in a season.
Yeah. So right now I'm looking at the baseball trade values. Is Higashioka is at a 4.5, while Manny Margot is a negative 2.7. So you would really need, and Askew, just looked it up, is at 1.6. So even with Askew, it wouldn't come up positive, which, so you're under here again. And I just want to just do this because I feel like there's so many people. Baseball trade values is fun. It's not accurate, people.
It's a very, very, very inexact science. And it also doesn't even take into account the need of the respective team. How much does the Yankees need a veteran outfielder versus how much do the Rays need a veteran catcher? And what is out there in comparison on the market?
Yes.
What's the next best thing to Manny Margot? I'm not saying, that seems probably, I would probably ballpark it at that as far as the baseball trade values. I thought your hypothetical deal was was in reason, some sort of lottery ticket prospect plus Margot for Higashioka, that could work. I mean, I think that's not out of reason, out of question.
I don't think so either. And it's not like, Higashioka is like this like world beating, offensive catcher or defensive minded catcher. I mean, yeah, he had 10 bombs, which is awesome as a catcher. 236, 274, 413 slash line, and 85 OPS plus. So like, it's not a guy you're going to get thrilled about seeing come up to the plate, but it's not like you're also going to hate it too as a catcher.
Right.
So
yeah,
I feel like, I don't know, something to put out there. Here you go. That's for free, Eric Neander. That one's for free. That's home the house, buddy.
You can send him an invoice later for the consulting services. Yeah. All right, we have more mailbag questions to get to, but first we have to tell you this. Score early this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's 150 buckaroos if your team wins. So if you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there is no better time to get in on the action than right this very moment. The app is super easy to use, and there's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and beyond. So visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn, LOCKEDON, to kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, they are the official partner of the NFL, and I'll say it one more time, FanDuel.com/LockedOn, LOCKEDON. Take advantage of that. All right, getting into this next mailbag question here from our buddy David Lopez, says, Rule 5 question. Hi, guys. Help me understand something better about the Rule 5 draft. Draft-eligible players have to be added to the 40-man roster to be protected from the draft. When a player is drafted, he's automatically added to his new team's 26-man roster. If they wish to remove him from their active roster, they have to first place him on waivers, and if he clears waivers, he has to be offered back to his original team. How does that work with a guy like Shane McClanahan who isn't going to pitch next season? Let's say the Rays left him off the 40-man because they really wanted to protect another player. What would be the risk of McClanahan being taken? If he is automatically placed on a new team's 26-man roster, what good is he to that new team if he can't play?
Thank you for writing to us, David. I think your idea all tracks, except for like the knowledge in the beginning that this is just for players that have never touched the major leagues first.
Right.
The Rule 5 draft. So with Shane McClanahan haven't pitched in MLB before, then he would never be subject to a Rule 5 draft. Only players that have never played MLB ball before are subject to Rule 5 draft.
Yeah. Now, I mean, the Rays could technically release Shane McClanahan and another team could pick him up, but yes, sure, he is not subject to the Rule 5, which was implemented so teams wouldn't stockpile young players.
Yes, exactly. And the Rule 5, the 5 comes between with the designation of 5 years in the team's control already, without being protected in the 40-man. That's where that comes from. That number 5. It's the 5 years. I would also say, remember that right now, yes, everybody needs to be in the 40-man, and because there's no IL, nothing is being played. But as soon as spring training begins, the 60-day IL opens back up. And so a lot of your 40-man guys that you're not going to be using, your Springs for basically more than half the season, Rasmussen for more than half the season, Shane McClanahan for the whole season, those guys you'll be able to transfer to the 60-day IL, and then you'll have some spots open for the 40-man. But yeah, I think that answers the question.
Yeah, and I'll tell you this, that if the Rule 5 did, or if there was some sort of designation that applied to players that have already performed or appeared in the major leagues, a team, any team, all 29, all 30 teams would gleefully waste a 26-man roster spot to have Shane McClanahan on their roster. Unless it was, I mean, even in his if it was his final year of arbitration, his final season of team control, they'd still get a draft pick after that. But I think any and every team would sign up for that immediately and say, yeah, we'll waste a quote unquote waste a 26-man roster spot. So he would theoretically be on our roster in years 25, 26, 27 and not being a free agent until 2028. I mean, that would be, that would be huge. A team would probably even accept a losing season to be able to have, 3 or 4 more years of Shane McClanahan healthy. What they would hope is a healthy Shane McClanahan.
Ask that to Rays fans listening right now if they would take a 2024 losing season. As long, that it all comes with perspective. I think the Colorado Rockies would definitely take that. I think Rays fans have now evolved into their wants, needs, and aspirations on playoff baseball. But I will say, your idea is kicking off some project in my head. What if there was an IL draft?
Yeah.
Just, hey, let's switch up the injury guys. Like, you take this guy. Now, you could protect some guys on the IL, on the 60-day IL draft. Like, you can protect 1 or 2 guys, but like, let's say this. There's a 60-day IL draft, and you can only protect 2 of these guys. So that means that you're now faced as Eric Neander. Again, thank you, Eric, for watching the show. Hit that like button, Eric, and subscribe. You're like a ghost every dayer. You don't subscribe. Hit the subscribe button.
Yeah. Or have your intern or your executive assistant hit the subscribe button. We would appreciate that.
That we would appreciate that very much.
Could you imagine if you liked this show and was like, I like those guys, I want to hire them? Well, our services are available. They can't be rendered.
Available. Yes. And you know what? We would do the show live for you, Eric. Live. Yes, we'll do it live. What if you had the decision and now you can only protect 2 out of Rasmussen, Springs, and McClanahan?
Ooh. Definitely McClanahan would be one, but yeah, that's a good question. I would have to look up what the control is between Springs and Rasmussen, and I guess something I would also consider is the severity of their respective injuries.
It's the third one for Drew. It's not that for Springs. Springs is in a contract. Rasmussen isn't. So I don't know. I think I would lean Springs, but it just makes you think like that would be kind of a wild scenario of an IL draft.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely. And just I'm curious. I don't know if what the Rays quote unquote 40-man roster stands right now, but if they have plans or visions on taking somebody in the Rule 5 draft. Because it seems like it's been a minute since they've done that. They've had players scooped up from their organization, but who's the last Rule 5 acquisition? I guess it was Kevin Kelly. Sometimes I forget it. Yeah. So that'll be something to watch. And just real quickly here, held each December, the Rule 5 draft allows clubs without a full 40-man roster to select certain non-40-man roster players from other clubs. Clubs draft in reverse order of the standings from the previous season. Players signed at age 18 or younger need to be added to their club's 40-man roster within 5 seasons, or they become eligible for the Rule 5 draft. Players who signed at age 19 or older need to be protected within 4 seasons. Isn't there also, not to go too deep into this, but there's some consideration if you're on the AAA roster, you're exempt. I mean, there's a lot of.
There's also a AAA Rule 5 draft too.
Yeah, so it gets very, very muddy.
In the weeds.
Suffice to say that Shane McClanahan is not available for the Rule 5 draft. No. Thankfully, although he's already on the Rays roster, so it doesn't really matter. But yeah, so it's something to look at and research. And I think the Rule 5 draft's always fun because you do sometimes see guys that are Rule 5ers that become notable big name players. I think Dan Uggla was a Rule 5 draft years ago. So it does and can
Oh,
happen for sure.
I didn't know it was. I didn't know he was. From present time, I know Gary Whitlock is. Joey Ricard, Rays legend, turned into Orioles legend. I was too. So okay, cool, good to know.
All right, there we go. So hopefully that answers that. And then the final question or comment that we'll get to from Danny Perez on Instagram says, Tommy Pham is the type of guy we need. He shared us a video that summed up what Tommy Pham provides. Basically, one of, if not the hardest worker in the league, a great teammate, and a tone setter for the clubhouse, which clearly, obviously, is important for a budding young team and a team with playoff aspirations and World Series aspirations, I should say.
Yeah, I mean we've said this time and time again with the 2008 team, Cliff Floyd and Eric Hinsky. I was trying to wrap my head around who was the last like veteran been there, done that in the position player pool for the Rays. Bro, is it Longo? Like
it might be Longo, or I guess would you consider Kevin Kiermaier in that role?
Okay, Kevin Kiermaier,
Carlos Pena, James Shields. I mean, those are a couple names that come to mind.
But like, I couldn't even put Tommy Pham as a been there, done that guy in 2019 because he hadn't even hit free agency then.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Nelson Cruz was there for like 2.5 months, if that.
So, and he made a strong impact in that time. And that's the other thing too, is who can or will you add that can come in the clubhouse immediately and take on that onus and take on that role and immediately commands respect by his words and his actions and what he does on a day in, day out basis. Sort of like Zach Eflin, where the minute he was signed, it's like, yep, you're the dog now. You're the guy. You're somebody who's going to be leaned upon. So
here are the keys to the kingdom of the leadership. You are the guy. We shall follow. Yeah. Joey Votto. Votto would command so much respect. Like he's a Hall of Famer, dude. He's a Hall of Famer. So that it's that kind of vibe.
Yeah.
Brennan Belt. I mean, when the guy shows up and he's got less fingers in one hand without a ring than with a ring, you listen.
Right. Yeah. So I mean, there's a list of guys out there, whether it's a Brandon Belt, a Jock Peterson, a Michael Brantley, a Whit Merrifield, a Justin Turner. I mean, somebody who can, ideally, I think somebody who's won a ring and was a strong impact personality on that team that won a ring. So, I mean, if you want to go back a decade ago and look at, again, like a Carlos Pena, like a James Shields, like a Dustin Pedroia or a Jimmy Rollins. I mean, those are those are big names for sure. But I think, Daniel Perez kind of hit it on the head. Yeah, that, the impact Tommy Pham and Evan Longoria had on the Diamondbacks doesn't go unnoticed. So.
No. And unfortunately, that's not going to show up on Fangraphs or BREF or Baseball Savant. 100th percentile has that dog in him.
Yeah. Somebody who, when you get into the playoffs and you get into the World Series, that you can have a game where you go 4 for 4 or 5 for 5. You won't step down or fear the moment or moments. I think that's another big thing as well. That's why I kind of harp and look at guys who've performed in the postseason and performed in the World Series. Like, yeah, they're not going to get fazed by any of that. Where we've seen the Rays, what have they done offensively in the playoffs the last couple of seasons? Who can be the guy that pushes them or at least motivates them over the edge of like, yeah, you guys did it for 162 games. You can do it here in October. It's not that cold. The competition isn't that great. I mean, it's good, but you can score against these guys. You can win against these guys. You can perform against these guys.
And I know it's small sample size. It's like 4 games. I get it. They also have small sample size. The Guardians did, and the Texas Rangers did, and they came through. Like, I mean, it's also You know, I feel like you have a good point with been there, done that in the playoffs too. Like not only like,
Yeah.
oh, he's been a 10-year veteran but has never been to the playoffs. Like, no,
Who's a
I'd
World
rather
Series MVP out of those names? I mean,
yeah, exactly. There's a World Series MVP. You know, I feel like the Tommy Pham angle, like, dude, he went 4 for 4, and then for his fifth at bat, goes, no, give it to my boy because I want him to have an at bat in the World Series. Like,
yeah.
that's a leader, man.
Mhm.
That's how you lead. That's how you get guys in the locker room to respect you. Like, that's huge, man.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I would love to have a guy like that in the clubhouse. I feel like Tommy, if you haven't been um in a fandom without Tommy, I think you have a very negative perception of him. I feel like even some race fans have a negative perception of him. I do not. I want that guy. I want a guy who is willing to outwork anybody in the weight room, in the clubhouse, that wants it, that's going to tell them, "Hey, knock it off." I want that. That's awesome.
Yeah, that would be great. And I still remember, I mean, he's got some legendary interviews too of like, who do you thank for all your success? Me. I did it. I put in all the work. I didn't have a father figure around. I was out there after school playing ball by myself and making things happen. Yeah, so I don't know, bring Ben Zobrist out of retirement. I think people get the idea of what we're looking for. And again, somebody that can just inspire that change and be a change agent in the avenue. Because I think that the inability to score runs or make an impact in the playoffs, it can affect you, and it becomes sort of a losing mentality. And you think, can we do this? And bringing in a fresh voice or a fresh face that can say, yeah, you can do it. I've done it. You all can do it too. You're talented. So maybe it's just I don't know, something like that. But
It
I
gets
do think that
tiring. It
yeah,
gets tiring to be like the Milwaukee Brewers. Oh yeah, they're gonna make the playoffs. They're not gonna do anything in the playoffs. Like
right.
it's getting old.
Yes, it is indeed. So stay tuned for that. We'll see what happens and what acquisitions or ads the Rays may have in mind with that. Maybe trade for Corey Seager and have some of that magic melt off on the rest of the team. I don't know. So there we go. Yes, but Danny, your point is well taken on Tommy Pham. All right. Thank you all for the mailbag questions. Keep them coming. LockedOnRays@gmail.com. In the meantime, hope you all have a wonderful day. Stay safe, and we will talk to you tomorrow.